4 years ago, we had a pandemic that shook our world, but it also made us reflect on the past pandemics. And in this What the Elle in History video, I would like to talk to you about the man who created the plague doctor costume. I want to talk to you about this man, why he did what he did, and the repercussions of such a plague costume that we still think about nowadays in our own modern society. The man who is behind the plague doctor costume is named Charles Delom. He was the physician of King Louis XIII when he came with this idea that to attend the people who were sick by the plague, he needed to protect himself. He wrote during the 1619 plague outbreak in Paris that he developed an outfit made of Moroccan goat leather, including boots, breeches, a long coat, hat and gloves. It was modeled after a soldier's canvas gown which went from the neck to the ankle. The garment was impregnated with similar fragrant items as the mask. L'Homme wrote that the mask had a nose half a foot long, shaped like a beak, filled with perfume with only 2 holes, one on each side near the nostrils. But that can suffice to breathe and to carry along with the air one breathes the impression of the drugs enclosed further along in the beak. The costume he created was going to be used by other physicians in the next centuries every time there was a plague outbreak. A close friend of Charles, Michel de Saint-Martin, wrote Delom's memoir and recalled that during this terrible time in 1619, during the plague in Paris, that fathers abandoned their children and spouses refused to assist one another. Delom was not the kind of man who could just sit back and do nothing. He had to find a solution to attend the patients, to attend the people who needed him. And this is why he came with this idea of protecting himself and for any doctors to protect themselves when attending a sick patient. This brilliant invention in many ways advanced Delom's career, and he became a significant medical figure in the French court and beyond. He was really rewarded by Louis XIII for his imagination and for his endeavor to make things better, to really serve the people who needed him. His costume was used by physicians all around France and further afield, in other European countries such as Italy, with which, having spent part of his life there, Delom already had great connections. He was admired by the physicians of the University of Padua, and as a token of appreciation for his work, the city of Venice made him a Venetian nobleman. Like I said, this costume continued to be used by physicians and doctors in different centuries. During the Great Plague of Marseille in 1720, there was again the use of Delom's plague doctor costume. The truth is, Charles Delom is really known now for making this costume, but he had a great career as a physician himself. He was the son of another renowned medical man, Jean Delom, professor at the University of Montpellier. Jean Delom had been the primary physician to Louise de Lorraine-Vaudémont, and then he became the primary physician to Marie de Medici, Henry IV, wife and queen consort. Jean had built a remarkable reputation for himself at court, and Charles also benefited from his father's network. In 1606, at the age of 26, Charles was made primary physician to Henry IV of France. What I'm trying to tell you here is that he came from a very strong family of physicians, but also physicians who had very strong networks at court that became very powerful and influential in their own rights. And obviously, Charles Delom, when we created this costume, he made a name as well for himself. Both father and son were renowned as great doctors by their peers. Upon John's death in 1637, Monsieur Dupuy, surgeon to the Nevers family, wrote to Charles referring to John's immense contribution to the medical community and stated that his work on finding solutions for hemorrhoids had changed everyone's approach to these problems. He concluded his letters praising Charles' own medical merits. "You are the true successor to your father's accomplishments. The two men marked medical history. Obviously, when you have admirers and you're respected and you have influence, you also have enemies. Both Jean and Charles had made enemies over the years because of their fame and their work for the royal family. Dupuy himself alluded to these detractors who criticized Jean and Charles's works, saying he did not believe that they were at the service of science. This wasn't the first time Charles had faced criticism. In his memoir, Charles' friend, Michel de Saint-Martin, recalled that the physician made quite a few enemies along the way. People were saying that Jean and Charles were just trying to look for fame and were not really interested in serving the people. I would argue that is quite wrong, because when you really look at their works, they're really trying to find solutions. The plague costume in itself is a way to attend the people who were sick. The plague was a really dangerous disease, and Charles Delom still wanted to find a way to attend the sick people. I think the people who were attacking them were mostly jealous that they didn't have that kind of imagination, that they didn't have that kind of creativity in their own medical work. Charles served in all three French kings, Henry IV, Louis XIII, and Louis XIV. And in 1658, Louis XIV was afflicted with food poisoning. François Guénaud, a doctor who had worked with Delom, gave Louis an emetic composed of antimony and wine. Antimony, a poisonous metallic element, was used for medical purposes in the 17th century, but its toxicity alarmed some physicians who thought it more likely to be lethal than beneficial. In his account, Charles had recommended himself antimony as a powerful cure for sickness and other intestinal trouble for decades, but these cures had been vehemently opposed by his Parisian counterparts, notably Monsieur Patin. Fortunately for Charles, after the king took the medication, he felt better and recovered from his illness. And following Charles' advice, he allowed the use of antimony as a remedy for sickness and bowel disease all across France. Yet criticism of Charles increased. Charles had been recommending that court nobles, including the king and queen, drink his red beverage, which had wonderful properties. It was supposed to help to refresh and purify blood and to unclog arteries, and it could also cure any fevers. In response, Parisian physicians attacked him, asserting that these claims were absurd. And here it's towards the end of Charles Delom's career, and we can see that he's trying as well to get more and more influence at Louis XIV's court. Despite this, and despite all these attacks against him, Charles' fame and reputation continued to grow. Michel de Saint-Martin wrote that in the 1650s, a nobleman begged Charles to cure his wife from a disease that Parisian physician had declared incurable. Thanks to Charles' red beverage and the other remedies he offered, the woman was cured. In all honesty, it could have also been luck, but here I love that Charles Delom was really a man who tried to advance medicine. Overall, Charles is remembered as a brilliant doctor who not only created a plague prevention costume, but also who could entertain at court with his imagination and stories about the improbable remedies he had discovered. He was a true pioneer. He really wanted to learn more about medicine. He wanted to advance the field of medicine. He wanted to make sometimes mistakes, but to advance the field of medicine and to really push new discoveries. And I think the Parisian physicians and doctors who attacked him were very traditionalist and didn't like Charles Delom's creativity. But it's Charles Delom's creativity that made him so popular, and that made his invention of the plague doctor costume still popular and relevant today. He died on the 24th June 1678, and a month later the magazine Le Mercure Galant paid tribute to his medical accomplishments. Despite his distractors in Paris, he had an exceptional career, establishing himself as one of the most renowned French physicians who had ever lived. I hope you enjoyed this video on What the Hell in History about this man who is behind the plague doctor costume. Someone had to create it, and it was him. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for your support. I'll see you next time in another video. Bye!